3 million people. That is how many watched my niece Abigail point her camera at me during the Easter garden brunch. Guys, look at the fit, she whispered to her live stream, zooming in on my $60 cardigan. It is giving discount bin aesthetic. Then she panned to the valet lot. There sat my dented 2012 Toyota Camry, parked next to the family's leased Range Rovers. She launched a poll right there on the screen. Should we start a GoFundMe for Auntie Alicia? The view count skyrocketed. The family laughed. I didn't blink. I was just checking the math. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I drove away from the country club in silence. The Camry rattled as I hit a pothole, a sound that usually comforted me, but today felt like an accusation. Abigail's live stream was still running in my head. Discount bin aesthetic. Charity case. But as I merged onto the highway, the anger cooled into something else. Clarity. They saw a woman who clipped coupons and drove a 10-year-old car. They didn't see the woman who founded a global logistics empire currently managing $1.1 billion in assets. They didn't see the real estate portfolio worth $41 million. And they certainly didn't see the Launchpad Trust. $2.2 million. That was the number sitting in an account with Abigail's name on it, scheduled to unlock on her 21st birthday. I'd built it quietly, compounding interest over 2 decades, designed to give her the freedom I never had. The freedom to create, to build, to fail, and recover. I called it the Launchpad because I wanted her to fly. But as I drove past the high-rise apartment complex downtown, the one where Abigail lived in the penthouse, I thought about another number. $5,000 a month. That was the rent for her unit. Rent she thought her parents were paying. Rent I had been waiving for 3 years because I owned the building. I am not the poor aunt. I am the invisible architect of their entire lives. And they were about to find out what happens when the architect decides to redesign the blueprint. By noon, the view count had climbed to 5 million. The comment section was a digital bonfire, roasting my entire existence. Why does she look like a substitute teacher? Is that a stain on her sleeve? I scrolled through them with the detachment of an auditor reviewing a failing company's tax returns. Then my phone rang. It was my brother, Jason. I answered, expecting an apology. I expected a frantic explanation, maybe a promise that Abigail would take the video down. Instead, Jason sighed. The heavy, performative sigh of a man burdened by an incompetent employee. Alicia, we need to talk about your presentation, he said. Michelle is distraught. You embarrassed us at the club. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I embarrassed you? Abigail live-streamed me to 3 million strangers and called me a charity case. It is content, Alicia, he snapped. It is branding. You do not understand how this industry works. Abigail is building an empire. She needs to project a certain lifestyle. And frankly, you are damaging the aesthetic. You looked like the help yesterday. Do you have any idea how that reflects on us? On her future? I listened to him rant about optics and brand alignment, and I felt a cold shift in my chest. For years, I had wondered how my niece became so cruel. I had blamed social media. I had blamed her friends. But listening to my brother, I realized I had been analyzing the wrong data. This was not accidental. This was a system. Jason and Michelle had not just allowed Abigail to become a bully. They had engineered it. To them, human worth was not intrinsic. It was transactional. People were commodities to be leveraged or liabilities to be liquidated. In their household, disrespect was not a bug. It was the currency. And because I refused to display my wealth, my exchange rate was 0. So, Jason continued, his voice dropping to that patronizing tone he used when asking for a loan, the Masquerade Gala is next week. It is a major networking event for Abigail. We cannot have a repeat of the Easter disaster. You need to upgrade. Lease something decent. Buy a dress that does not look like it came from a clearance rack. And for God's sake, do not park that Toyota in the valet line. If you cannot look the part, maybe you should not come. He was giving me an ultimatum. Upgrade or vanish. He thought he was managing a liability. He had no idea he was insulting the bank. I did not argue. I did not defend my financial portfolio or list the assets I owned that were worth more than his entire life's earnings. I simply said, "Understood. I will handle it." "Good," he said. "We just want what is best for the family image." I hung up. I looked at the calendar. The Masquerade Gala was in 6 days. Plenty of time to prepare. They wanted me to look the part? Fine. I would give them a show they would never forget. The next day, I watched Abigail's follow-up video. It was a ranking of family members by net worth. There I was at the very bottom, my photo overlaid with a giant zero and a clown emoji. She laughed as she explained that my net worth was probably just my coupon collection. I watched the screen, waiting for the familiar sting of rejection. It never arrived. In its place was the cold precision of a CEO realizing a partnership was no longer viable. Emotion is just inefficient data in a crisis. I deleted it. I opened my laptop and initiated a video call. Richard answered on the first ring. He was my trust administrator, a man who viewed inefficiency as a personal insult and disorder as a moral failing. "Richard," I said, "we need to talk about the Launchpad Trust." He didn't ask why. He just pulled up the file. Current valuation is $2,246,000 and change. Maturation date is 5 days from now. Are we proceeding with the disbursement schedule? "No," I said. "I want to invoke Section 4. Richard paused. "Section 4, the character clause. Correct. I want to freeze the assets immediately." There was a silence on the line, heavy and final. For years, I had held onto this trust like a prayer. I had told myself that money could be a tool for good, that if I just gave Abigail enough support, enough freedom, she would choose to be kind. I wanted to be wrong about her. I wanted my brother's toxicity to be an anomaly, not a genetic trait. I had been the silent watchman, guarding a future I hoped she would earn. But watching that video, watching her laugh at my zero net worth, I realized I wasn't guarding her future. I was financing her cruelty. Revoking the trust wasn't revenge. It was parenting. It was the boundary her actual parents had never set. "Freeze it," I said. "Prepare the revocation documents." "Consider it done," Richard said. His fingers flew across his keyboard. "Do you want me to notify the beneficiary?" "No," I said. "Not yet. I'll deliver the news myself. At the gala." "Very well. Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "I want a full forensic audit of the property management records for the downtown penthouse. Specifically, I want to see the rent payments." Richard looked up, his eyebrows narrowing. "The rent payments you waived?" "The rent payments my brother claims he is making." "I'll have the report by morning." I closed the laptop. The screen went black, reflecting my own face. I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a CEO closing a bad division. The red ink was drying. Richard called me back at 6 a.m. the next morning. His voice was tight, the way it got when he found a discrepancy in a ledger that couldn't be explained by incompetence. "I have the forensic audit for the penthouse," he said. "Alicia, you have been waiving the rent for Unit 42B for 3 years, correct?" "Correct. According to these bank records, your brother Jason and his wife Michelle have been collecting $5,000 a month for that same unit." I stopped breathing for a second. Collecting from whom? From your parents? The room spun. My parents. My elderly parents who lived on a fixed income, who still clipped coupons, who worried about heating bills in the winter. Jason and Michelle were taking $60,000 a year from them, claiming it was for Abigail's rent. Rent that didn't exist. They were stealing. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. It wasn't just bad parenting or a difference in values. This was theft. They were bleeding their own parents dry to fund their country club lifestyle, using my generosity as the weapon. Every time I waived the rent, I wasn't just helping Abigail. I was unwittingly handing Jason a blank check to rob our mother and father. "Richard," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned, "prepare 2 documents for the gala." "The revocation?" "Yes. And an eviction notice, effective immediately." "Understood." I hung up. I looked out the window at my quiet street, at the modest houses and the sensible cars. For years, I had let them treat me like a doormat because I thought it was the price of keeping the peace. I thought if I just stayed quiet, if I just gave enough, they would eventually see me. But they didn't see me. They saw a mark. They saw a fool. The guilt I had felt about ruining Abigail's birthday evaporated. It was replaced by a steely resolve. This wasn't about teaching a lesson anymore. This was about stopping a crime. The game had changed, and I was done playing by their rules. The masquerade gala was held at the historic St. Regis Hotel ballroom. It was opulent, loud, and filled with people who looked like they had been curated rather than invited. Abigail stood on a raised platform, wearing a custom gown that probably cost more than my parents' annual pension. She was surrounded by cameras, beaming, waiting for the moment when her parents would present her with the surprise she had been hinting at all week. I walked in wearing a simple, elegant black dress. No jewelry, no mask. I stood near the back, watching the spectacle. Michelle and Jason were near the stage, looking nervous. They knew they didn't have a big check to give her. They were counting on the trust fund to kick in at midnight, to save them from having to admit they were broke. Richard stepped onto the stage. He was wearing a tuxedo, but he carried his leather portfolio like a weapon. The music died down. The crowd turned. Abigail looked confused. "Who is this?" she whispered to her live stream. "Miss Abigail," Richard said, his voice amplifying through the microphone. "I am the administrator of the Launchpad Trust." The crowd gasped. Abigail squealed. "Is this it? Is this the money?" "The original value of the trust was $2.2 million, Richard continued. The room erupted. Abigail literally jumped up and down. "2 million! Oh my God!" "However," Richard said, cutting through the noise, "pursuant to Section 4, the character clause, the trust has been subject to a forfeiture review." The silence was instant and absolute. On April 12th, you posted a video publicly mocking and humiliating a family member, specifically the individual who established and funded this trust. You subsequently posted additional content amplifying the cruelty. As trustee, I have determined this constitutes a material breach. Accordingly, the trust has been dissolved. Dissolved? Abigail's voice cracked. "What does that mean?" "It means the money is gone." "No!" She looked at her parents. "Mom! Dad! Do something!" Michelle and Jason rushed the stage. "You can't do this!" Jason screamed. "That money belongs to her. It's family money." That's when I stepped out of the shadows. "It's not family money, Jason," I said, my voice calm but carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. "It's my money." Every head turned. Abigail looked at me, then at her parents, then back at me. You're broke. You drive a Camry." I walked toward the stage. The crowd parted. "I didn't need to shout. I funded the trust, Abigail. I funded your prep school. I funded the car you got for your 16th birthday, and I own the building you live in." Jason turned pale. "Alicia, wait." His panic was irrelevant. I reached into my clutch and retrieved the only thing that mattered now, a cream-colored envelope. "And speaking of the apartment," I said, turning to my parents who were sitting in the front row, looking bewildered. "Mom, Dad, did you know Jason has been charging you $5,000 a month for Abigail's rent?" My mother stood up, her hand to her throat. "Yes, he said it was for the landlord." "I am the landlord, Mom, and I have never charged a dime of rent." The gasp that went through the room wasn't theatrical. It was real. The masks were off. Jason and Michelle weren't just embarrassed parents. They were exposed as thieves. They had been stealing from their own elderly parents to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, using my generosity as the cover. "Here is the eviction notice," I said, handing the envelope to a trembling Abigail. "And here is the forensic accounting of the stolen rent money. The authorities have already been notified." I looked at Abigail one last time. "You wanted to be famous, Abigail. You wanted a viral moment. Well, here it is. You're welcome." The exit doors were heavy, solid oak and brass. Pushing them open felt like breaking a seal. Behind me, the chaos erupted, Abigail sobbing, my mother screaming at Jason, the cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. I didn't look back. The ledger was balanced. The next day, the video from the masquerade gala went viral, but not the way Abigail had planned. One of her guests, a rival influencer she'd invited just to flaunt her wealth, had live-streamed the entire confrontation. The clip of me handing over the eviction notice, calm and impeccably dressed, racked up 10 million views in 24 hours. The internet, which had mocked my discount bin aesthetic just a week ago, pivoted instantly. They called me the CEO of silence. They made edits of my exit set to dramatic music. They dissected Abigail's reaction frame by frame, reveling in the moment her entitlement crumbled. Abigail lost everything. Her followers, realizing her entire persona was funded by the poor aunt she mocked, abandoned her en masse. Brands dropped her. She was evicted from the penthouse within 48 hours. She moved into a small studio apartment paid for by her own minimum wage job at a coffee shop. Michelle and Jason faced a different kind of justice. My parents, heartbroken but firm, pressed charges for elder financial abuse. The rent money they had stolen was being clawed back through the courts. They lost their country club membership, their leased cars, and their social standing. They were exposed not just as bad parents, but as predators. As for the $2.2 million, I didn't keep it. I established the Second Chance Fund, dedicated to helping women over 40 rebuild their lives after financial abuse. The money that was meant to fund Abigail's vanity was now funding other women's freedom. I am sitting in my living room now, wearing my $60 cardigan. It is soft, warm, and paid for with my own money. I sip my coffee and watch the sunrise over my quiet street. I don't need a masquerade. I don't need applause. I have something better. I have peace. If you've ever been underestimated by people who confuse silence for weakness, hit that like button and share this story. And remember, the people who mock you for being quiet might be standing on ground you built.